Morning, Paul.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Good morning to everyone.
Mike, good morning. Noah. Frank. Good turnout.
Okay, nobody is in the waiting room.
Okay.
So whenever Mark wants to start.
I'm ready to go because, like I said, I've been up for a long time learning about the new tax laws, so I'm fine. I think I know everybody here, but my name is Mark. I'm one of the illustrious quad chairs, probably the weakest link of the four, but I see the other quad chairs are here with us today to help me out when I get off track, Amy and Robin and Kim. So thank you for being here. A couple things I want to do, just kind of talk about the structure, remind everybody, what's going on today. We're going to have, it's a special day. Today's Chamber Day. Learn about the Chamber Day. So we're going to have some special guest speakers to talk a little bit about the chamber, your chamber, our chamber. And then we're going to have, of course, lots of great learning from Dr. Korach, Dr. K, as I understand now, who's being referenced, which is awesome. And so I do want to talk about one format change, one small format change. We're going to do breakout groups like we normally have done and stuff. Towards the end, when we normally have done our takeaways, where we kind of go around and everyone gets a chance to spend a few seconds talking about their takeaway, we're going to do it a little bit different this time. We're going to try something a little bit different to try to get a little bit better participation, just see how this happens. So we're going to go right towards the end when Dr. Korach is finished. We're going to go into breakout sessions. Again, just a small breakout groups, probably 5 or 6 of us in a group. Give your takeaways at that point in time, and then the discussion leader, the group leader, will take those notes, kind of synthesize them, and then we'll provide feedback to Bill and Liz on that. So we're going to try that. So I encourage you, please, if you can, I know we're all busy, but if you can stick around to the very end, you'll have a chance to provide your feedback that way. Of course, you can always just fire off a missive to one of the 4 quad chairs, and we'll take your feedback and go from there today. So that's kind of the plan for the day. I'm going to kick it off. We also have day chairs, but our day chair today is so powerful, we only need one of her, and that's Neelam. So I'm going to introduce Neelam briefly, and then she's going to introduce our chamber speakers. So, Neelam's accomplishments and resume is much more impressive and much longer than mine is. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read part of it just so we all know who Neelam is. So of course, a lot of us know Neelam as somebody who's on the school board, and we really appreciate her for doing that. It's interesting, she's the first person of color and the first South Asian American to serve in that role. So again, it's really awesome, Neelam, and we appreciate you for your service. She's a public health professional, social worker, and volunteer with a 30-year history in Lake Oswego. So that rivals a lot of us in the room with how much time she's been participating and active in Lake Oswego. She's the director of clinical supports, integration, and workforce unit with the Oregon Health Authority. And she has over 20 years experience as a strategic healthcare leader in advancing health equity and cross-sector initiatives in Los Angeles County and nationally. And, she's got quite an impressive background. Her career has touched a lot of different people, a lot of different ways. And in her spare time, which I don't know, Neelam, if you really have spare time, but when you do have spare time, she said that she enjoys reading, hiking, spending time with family and friends, including her partner, Kabir Bhatia, and her daughter, Ria, and exploring the beautiful Northwest. So welcome, Neelam, our day chair, who's going to introduce our chamber speakers. Thank you, Neelam. And you'll need to unmute yourself, Neelam. I can't do it from here.
Thank you.
There you
Thank
go.
you. Sorry, I'm having some Zoom issues, of course. But thank you, Mark. And thank you so much to Leadership Lake Oswego for having me today. It's so wonderful to be here and see so many colleagues and friends and neighbors. I just want to start off by saying how much I enjoyed my experience in Leadership Lake Oswego last year. Over the weekend, I actually had an opportunity to run into Dr. Korach, which was so lovely to have an opportunity to connect beforehand and to have an opportunity to say hello in person. It's also great to see a lot of the district administration and staff participating this year. I just, want to give so much kudos to our wonderful team for all you've done to reopen schools. As a school board member and as a parent, I am so eternally grateful to have our kids back in person and having an opportunity for all the social interaction that they missed in the last year and a half. I just want to also say how much I got out of Leadership Lake Oswego last year, the connections, the wonderful information, the discussions. It was just all so enriching. And I'm so pleased today to introduce Debbie and Liz. Debbie Siegel is the owner of Kumon Math and Reading on Boones Ferry Road. She has worked for the city of Lake Oswego and is married to the Community Development Director, Scott Siegel. She has chaired the Government Affairs Committee, served as treasurer, and now is the president of the chamber. Her goal this year is to implement a strategic plan, increase membership, and recognize the impact of businesses from the Lake Grove area as Boones Ferry Road opens from a successful project completion. And I had an opportunity to walk along Boones Ferry Road the last week and admire all the wonderful improvements from that project. So I'm excited too. Liz, and then Liz doesn't need an introduction, but she is, as you're all very familiar, an executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. She has a background in public relations, politics, and fundraising, and balances her time working with local businesses and volunteers as an elected school board member. And I'm so pleased to have her as a colleague on the school board. And today, Debbie and Liz will talk about how an organization leads to promote both business and community. And I will hand it off to Debbie.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm really pleased to be here today. I'm excited to tell you a little bit about what the chamber does in a really short period of time, of course, but you should understand that for the most part, the chamber is made up of volunteers. We do have some paid staff like Liz, and Jen, but we do need the help of volunteers to do a lot of what we do. So my core focus today is to talk about the chamber's mission and about our strategic plan that we've been working on for the last, I want to say at least maybe 18 months. We've been working pretty hard on this, and yeah, I'm happy to share all of that with you guys. First off, I'd like to share the mission statement, and I'm going to see if maybe Liz can put that up for you guys. And it's coming, there it is. So the chamber's mission is to strengthen local business through education, advocacy, and community partnerships. Our vision is to be a vital partner in making Lake Oswego a vibrant and inclusive community to visit, grow a business, and call home. And the values that we use in the work that we do every day is to remain future focused, provide catalytic strategic leadership that positions members for an even brighter future, not event future, which I have on mine, and then member committed, maintain a relevant, responsive organization that's inclusive of our diverse community, and be excellence driven. Commit to providing quality events and programming that reflects integrity and fiscal responsibility. So thanks, Liz. I think we can move that. But the thing that I wanted to share with you also is that the way we got to this point, being a chamber that works with business, we needed to come up with a plan where we weren't just reacting to things. Financially, it's always good to have a better long-term strategic plan than just to react to short-term ups and downs. So, I mean, that's true for every business, but for the chamber, we took more of a business approach in planning for finances, planning for ways that we could become more relevant to the community and to the businesses throughout the area. So one of the things that we did was to have a visioning type of process where we sat down and thought, what would be the ultimate thing that we could do? What kind of vision do you want to see your community have? And think about all the places that we visited, all the visions and things that you've enjoyed, all the dreams and things that kind of been nagging at you, you'd love to see in Lake Oswego, and just put them all on paper. So we had Jay Halliday help us, and he's a retired CEO, and he's on our board, and he helped put together some major themes. And then he also put together some objectives based on all of that input that he received. So what we thought about for our major themes is differentiating ourselves from other communities around us. What would make Lake Oswego special and make people want to come and visit us? And then making sure that we are also telling the story of Lake Oswego so that other people aren't making assumptions about us. That, you know, tell the story about how wonderful our community is, the schools, the businesses, the government, everything that we do, and how we all work together, and we are welcoming everybody to our city. And then ensuring the vitality and diversity of the business community. So this was especially relevant through the pandemic. And I'm sure all of you have seen the ways that different businesses have had to survive. You know, restaurants having to do takeout. We have a lot of folks in gyms and exercise studios having to actually close, which was not ideal. So just thinking about ways, every situation that we could imagine, you know, fire, smoke, pandemic, you name it, has gone into some emergency planning documents that we're about to share with our businesses, and also thinking ahead in terms of how do we become more resilient as a chamber. And then finally, making sure we're accessible, and then making sure that we have a strong consumer base here. So again, issues that we talk about all the time are transportation, things like Boones Ferry Road. Having a business in Lake Grove, I can tell you, our access has not been great. Definitely during the construction has been super challenging. But even before that, it was super dangerous to take left-hand turns out of our driveway. And I was watching people do that all the time. And then I just dreaded the crunch, because there was always a crunch about every week. And I really worried about kids and parents who would run across the street after my classes to go get ice cream at McDonald's. And they would not take their kids down to the light. And that scared me very badly. So that was one of the things that, having been there 20 years, I was kind of nagging and like, when are you guys going to do something about, you know, fixing those sidewalks, fixing those pedestrian crossings? And as a business community in both Lake Grove and at the chamber, we were successful in making that happen. So again, caring about what's happening around you, looking around you at your community, what are the things that we can do to make it better? All of that goes into strategic planning for ourselves, our businesses, and also for the community. Let's see, objectives I wanted to share with you guys also will be being a resource and a partner for business, which we were great with our Business Recovery Center. improving the bench strength of our staff and our board. I'd say we knocked it out of the park with Liz. She has done an outstanding job. She brings a set of skills that we have not seen at the chamber. And she has done an amazing job of keeping everything going, no matter what her situation is, no matter where her office is. She's worked out of many different places, and we are thrilled to have her and Jen as our staff. But our board, we are working really hard on becoming more diverse as a board in terms of business size and diversity of types of business, but also people of color coming from every background as possible, so that everyone who works and lives in Lake Oswego feels that they are welcome at the chamber and can volunteer with us in any capacity. We talked about being financially sustainable. Again, I think that's something that comes from success, and that success will build on itself once you do things correctly and go according to your values. You start to become sustainable, and people will continue to join you and want to be a part of what's going on. So again, I want to also thank our partners, the school board, Dr. Korach, Dr. Sheely, having the city involved with what we do. We would not be the community we are if we didn't have those close relationships. So again, that's part of the objectives going forward, is making sure that those are maintained. And then one of the fun things that came up was that what is really interesting about Lake Oswego? Well, what would make people want to come? We decided it's food. We have tons of food and wine and all kinds of beverage businesses now. Why not play that up? Why not make that something that maybe we can do to help promote in a special way? So we're going to be talking about doing a food and wine event in the spring in Lake Grove, in addition to our wine walk in the fall. So what other ways could we possibly support people who have businesses that need extra staff? Maybe being able to pool resources, be able to get a round table of people who own businesses and be able to share knowledge and tips amongst each other. So those are some of the ideas that are in our plans going forward. We haven't implemented everything yet by any stretch, but we have a lot of really great ideas. And then, you know, just making sure that we are connected with our neighborhoods, our businesses, that we're involved in what's happening in the community, that we are making an effort to get out there in person, participate in events, to go to the meetings that are there, and that our board is active and engaged, and we are always thinking. So I'd like to make that kind of our little tagline, you know, always thinking. So thinking ahead. So, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Liz.
Thank you, Debbie. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the kind words. Always appreciate those as well. You know, Jen Peterson on the call. She is half-time for us, working on social media and a variety of other things that keep our members informed. You know, in Leadership Lake Oswego, we work on, you know, developing you as leaders for your companies and your personal strength, but we also know that you want to be leaders in the community. And we're just really appreciative that you are enrolled in Leadership Lake Oswego and participating with each other. In the chamber, we find there are two kinds of members. There are members who pay just because they want people to know that they're supporting the community. And we love those members. And then we have members who want to be participants in the community, and we love those members too. And so those are the people who are on the boards of directors. Those are the people who work on our committees like government affairs and membership and marketing, and in the future, tourism, because we're going to be taking a bigger look at what's going on in Lake Oswego. And then we have members who network. And on Friday morning, we have networking from 8 to 9. Our very last one in person is tomorrow morning at Bessos. You are all welcome to come drop by. The formal programs at 8:20. You can meet some of our chamber members face to face. We will be going virtual after that. And I know a number of you on the call are chamber members who have done the virtual networking. We'll be doing that for December and January, and then putting a whole new structure in for what networking is going to look like for the future of 2022. No chamber is the same. So if you come from a town and have been involved in a chamber before, the one commonality is that no one is the same. And in Lake Oswego, I think, you know, in our schools, in our government, and in our community, we pride ourselves on doing things the Lake Oswego way. And that's because even though the world may think that we're just a wealthy community, we're also an educated community, we're a hardworking community, and we really like being involved. And I think you see that in the committees at the schools and at the city and at all of our organizations like Rotary and Kiwanis and Lions and Respond to Racism. The chamber is the one place that pulls all of those organizations together. And in the times when we can meet together, we try and do a fusion event on an annual basis where we can bring everybody together and kind of talk about what's going on in Lake Oswego. Now, the chamber has things like fusion, which brings the community together for discussions. But we also have programs like Leadership Lake Oswego. The chamber is the group that does the community awards event. So we have awards that come from the arts community, from the historic community, a variety of places, and honors our business, our community leaders, and lifetime achievement awards for what people have done in our community. The one thing you probably see the most of is the flower basket. The chamber has a foundation that is for the flower baskets, but also for education and advocacy. You'll see the flower baskets come out in May and they leave in October. And next year they will be amazing because we'll be adding in Boone's Ferry Road. So there will be flower baskets everywhere. Volunteers put those up. Our mayor, Joe Buck, has sponsored the Breakfast for Volunteers for the last few years. We've not had volunteers for 2 years, but we are so ready to bring that back. And then we try and do some other events for our business community, which in the past has been the wine walk for the downtown group, the first Saturday in October. But right now we are working on a food and wine or food and beverage event for the Lake Grove neighborhood. And that will be in April. So if you have an interest in giving input or volunteering or doing anything like that in the community, we would love to have you. And finally, Debbie mentioned the Business Recovery Center. And the chamber had to pivot, just like every business, like every person, every teacher, we all pivoted last year. And the chamber is not just for chamber members. We work to support our business community. And that has meant working with Clackamas County. We have funding. We have a representative who is out visiting businesses to see what they need to give them resources. Because starting a business, it's not simple, but not everybody puts the same supports in place to keep their business going. And certainly this last couple of years have changed how business is done. The Business Recovery Center has allowed us to have somebody local in Lake Oswego. We're partnered with Westland to find resources for these businesses to keep them in our communities, because a lot of the reasons that people live in Lake Oswego is for the amenities that we have, for the leadership that's involved, and to support the great things that are going on here. So really appreciate that all of you are taking the Leadership Lake Oswego program. It is through the Chamber of Commerce. We have many levels of membership. We now have an individual level. So if you are not officially affiliated with a program, or you're retired, or you're even an entrepreneur starting a business, we have an individual membership now. So I will stop there and open up for questions. And Debbie, do you have anything else to add? Because sometimes all the things that are going on don't get mentioned in these kind of presentations.
I do not. I think you've done a great job, Liz. There's just so much to share, but I would like to add, if anybody has questions, you can always reach out to Liz or I after class or anytime, and we are more than happy to help you understand what we do, or to explain a program, or introduce you to anybody at the chamber. So please reach out to us at any time.
And I do want to extend an invitation. From time to time, you'll get insider information because you are affiliated with the chamber right now, but you'll be getting an invitation, or maybe you already have, for the December 1 celebration. It was the chamber's 80th birthday this year, and we really have not had any large events, but we are going on December 1 from 5:30 to 7 to the Iron Light, which is the 4th floor of the Beacon Building, 525 3rd Street. We'd like your reservation so we know how many people are coming. You do need to be masked when you're not eating or drinking, and show a proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test 72 hours prior to the event. It will be one of those opportunities where you may be able to see some of your class members. Dr. Korach will be there. A number of the people on the screen have already RSVP'd. So if and when you see that invitation come through, go ahead and RSVP. If you haven't received one yet, send to liz@lake-oswego.com and we will get that in your inbox and bring you up to the Iron Light. And I think the other thing that people like to know in the chamber is when there are new things coming. One of the things we will be celebrating this Saturday is a ribbon cutting for the brand new Freeland Spirits on State Street. So if you're there at noon, we'll be cutting the ribbon and welcoming this women-owned business to Lake Oswego.
Do we have other questions for Liz and Debbie? Great presentation, by the way. I learned a lot about the chamber and I thought I knew quite a bit about it. So thank you.
For those of you who may not know, Mark Birch is a past president of the Chamber of Commerce, as well as Dr. Korach and Christopher Boyer. And am I missing any other past presidents on this call? I don't think so.
I just want to say thank you both. You guys do an amazing job for the city. People don't understand all the different facets that you're on and what you do, but it's amazing. So thank you.
And I just wanted to say thank you, especially the last 2 years. I have been involved more with the chamber and what they have done for us, reached out. We really appreciate it. And we're in Lake Grove and we are so ready to get that road done. But I understand the safety. I mean, that was a horrible sidewalk too. That sidewalk that I rode on that on my bike years ago. But anyway, we appreciate both of you and thank you very much.
You know, I just share one more story. Vaccinations are discussed all over the community, but one of the best partnerships that we had last year was with the Lake Oswego Fire Department. And they came to us and said, do you think you could help us coordinate vaccine for our business community? So we were able to schedule, I believe, more than 800 appointments for our local employees. And what many people don't know is that I believe it's about 80% of the employees in this community do not live in this community. And our employee population were enthusiastically scheduling things. They're still checking back with us. Our fire department is a treasure, and you should know that not every community has an organization like this. And not every community was able to do these things for their community through vaccine clinics. And our fire department is really one of the most engaged community groups, probably in the state, if not on the West Coast. So big shout out to the Lake Oswego Fire Department.
I have a question real quick. Liz or Debbie, can you talk about, I know years ago, it was years ago that I was on the board and president, but some of the conversation we have from time to time was, what are chambers doing? What are other chambers doing? What's going on at a national level? Is there anything there that you want to share with us or can share with us? What do you see a chamber doing 5 or 10 years from now that maybe we're not able to do today?
Well, I can give you a couple of notes that I've learned. I know that on a national level, there's a lot of advocacy, obviously with Congress, mostly around business taxes. because most of the business community in the US is very small. And then protecting small business that way. I know that on a state level, they still coordinate and talk to each other. And then Liz can tell you a little bit more about this, but around the ARPA funds and the Business Recovery Center, working with our elected officials, that has been really, really important so that we can continue funding Laquita Corbett, who's been the person that's gone in person to so many businesses in the last year. She's done a great amount of work, and it's because of the advocacy that chambers in general, were meant to do, was to protect business and help people from getting driven out of business by, inadvertent, rulemaking that maybe have, unintended consequences on the little guy a lot of time. And sometimes I think people don't really think about how sole proprietors work, and that it's a lot of effort, and they can't be sick, they can't be out, they have to get up and be there every single day. And if you're having to swim upstream against a lot of regulation or taxes that maybe we're solving some big problem, but are coming down to be a real hardship for you, it's the Chamber of Commerce who tends to come in and help and coordinate on behalf of all of these little businesses. So, that's the role, the historical role of chambers. I would say that one of the other things that I really like to see for regions to work together is we have multi-chamber events at times where we get together and have networking amongst us. And then there's also a conference that happens annually as well. Liz, am I forgetting anything?
So the Chamber has a Government Affairs Committee, and we've chosen to be more local on what we evaluate for the impact of business in Lake Oswego. The Government Affairs Committee hears from our state representative and senator every year. We have good relationships with them. We have focused primarily on cities. So on the board, there is a city council person and a representative from the city of Lake Oswego. The chamber will do candidate events for city council, and we will be expanding likely into county commissioner, because we have not been as engaged with the county in the past, but the pandemic has made the Clackamas County presence a little more important in our business community. We have 2 county commissioners who are Lake Oswego residents, and one of them is a chamber member. We find that those folks are engaged and know what's going on in Lake Oswego. We are the largest city in Clackamas County, so it behooves us to be engaged in Clackamas County. We have not been as involved in Metro, although the Metro president is a past city councilor, and she's the chair of the Metro and lives in Lake Oswego. If there are things that are coming up that impact Lake Oswego, we will become more involved. And as Debbie mentioned, transportation is going to be a huge issue in the next couple of years. We can send you a link if you're interested to see the presentation that ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation, made to City Council this week. There will be an impact with tolling. We may be seeing more traffic coming through Lake Oswego. Now's the time to start planning or thinking about what the implications will be. And then we always have a presence with our congressman. Our congressman has been to our offices and met with our local chambers. They tend to come in about once a year. They usually want to know what's going on in the cities that they represent. But on the national level, we have not been as participatory with the US Chamber or weighing in. It takes a lot of processing. We don't have, our committees don't meet regularly enough. There are chambers that meet every single week for government affairs because they want their pulse on everything that's going on. We are not a large city. I mean, we are a population of 40,000. So trying to keep on top of everything is not something that we have the bandwidth for, but we do try to keep on top of the things that are most locally impactful to our businesses and our community.
Great, thanks Liz, and thanks Debbie. Anybody else have any questions before we move forward? Okay, before I turn it back over to Neelam to transition to Dr. Korach, I forgot something that I wanted to do for sure, and that is give Jen Singer and Catherine a chance just to kind of introduce yourselves. I think it's the first class you've been able to attend. So if you could just start with Catherine, and if you could do that, just tell us a little bit about you and why you're excited to be part of Leadership Lake Oswego, and it'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, should I go first? I'm Catherine. Can you guys all hear me? Yep. I'm not experienced Zoom person, so at any moment it could fail me. So I have a local pet sitting business, and during the pandemic, I definitely had to pivot and started doing more dog training, which I've been doing for 8 years, but I ended up doing a lot more dog training. Now it's back to pet sitting with people traveling. I feel really, should I just think about what I was going to say? Just kind of humbled to be a part of this. I know Debbie Siegel because she tutored my son maybe 15 years ago. So I have 3 kids. I'd say that they're definitely my pride and joy, that this community has kind of supported me in a way through my business. So I'm just very thankful for that. I see Amy. I don't, you know how the screen only shows 4 or 5 people that have Debbie and Amy. So yeah, no, it's just been a very hard couple of years, but I feel very supported by the community. I'm thankful and hope to learn a lot from all of you and the experience out there. Am I still?
Jen, yeah, go ahead.
Did you guys hear me?
Yeah, we heard you, Catherine. Thank you.
My name's
appreciate it.
My name's
Yeah,
Jen
go ahead.
Singer. My name's Jen Singer. I am came here a little bit differently than most people. I grew up in Southwest Portland and was that person who said I would never live in Lake Oswego. And then I married a man from Lake Oswego, who's my mother-in-law has been for 40 years, 35 years, exceptionally involved in the community. When I moved to Lake Oswego just 3 years ago for the schools, so my daughter could attend Westridge, which is also where my husband went. And so when we moved back here, it was time for me to really embrace where I was. It did not take long for me to fall in love with this community. And now for all of my friends from Southwest who are like, I can't believe you live in Lake Oswego. I am a realtor who is now moving most of them to Lake Oswego. So we have to get the message out, is my point, about how amazing the community is. I'm the PTSO president for Westridge this year, so jumped right in on the volunteering of that aspect. And really it's, as someone who is also Jewish, there's a lot of information that I wanna get out about how amazing this community is and how welcoming it can be, and why I'm grateful to be here. So I'm honored to be here. Thanks to my amazing mother-in-law for pushing me in. Yeah, I'm grateful to be here and happy to be a part of this.
Great. Thank you so much. And I also realize I was remiss in not thanking Mark for his incredible role in being part of the leadership team that recently passed, that was recently responsible for the passage of the Lake Oswego school bond. So thank you, Mark, for everything you did for that. And it's awesome also to see, so many really wonderful, active school volunteers who were also part of the campaign. Thank you so much to all of you for making this important investment, and a lot of you as voters as well, who voted in support of this important investment in the spaces and places that make our schools such wonderful learning places. And that provides a great transition for me to introduce Dr. Korach, who actually doesn't need any introduction. He is such an amazing leader for Leadership Lake Oswego, having served as the superintendent for so many years in the Lake Oswego schools. And we're so lucky to have him and his knowledge and expertise in this venue. So I'll hand it off to Dr. Korach.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate it. I'll try to live up to that a little bit today. I want to congratulate the chamber also. I was on the chamber board for 27 years, twice president. The chamber has, in my opinion, never been stronger. And there's so much promise with what's ahead for the chamber, and they make a huge difference in this community. So thank you for being here. I wore my, I don't know if you can see it, but I wore my Thanksgiving shirt. So I want to say thank you. Liz also, we did not coordinate. Hers is red or orange, but we've got the whole Thanksgiving orange thing going on for us here. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, because you give me the opportunity, and it is an opportunity that I have embraced for a lifetime. In that I learn a great deal when I try to teach someone something or mentor someone, because I have to spend a lot of time thinking about what's going to make the most difference for people, and that helps me grow. And so I want to thank you. My Thanksgiving wish for you is that you benefit from what we're trying to do together. And so far, I think we are continuing to work to strengthen the program, and we need your feedback as we move along and move forward. So I'm going to start with a question today that's not in your materials, okay? That's one of the most important questions that leaders seldom ever ask themselves. You know, as you think about this, as you pause to think about it, we started our work together with listening to other people and making sure you were attentive and understood the merit of what they had to say, whether you agree with it or not. Then we moved over to listening to yourself and trying to understand the kinds of questions you would want to ask yourself, to be introspective and thoughtful so that you can keep growing. And now we're moving to things that are automatic, that you can benefit from if you really understand them, like mental models, like curiosity. If you really know how it works, you can use it to your advantage. But circle back now. What's the one question that leaders seldom ask themselves that really is a difference maker question? Anybody? There could be several good answers. I have one in mind. Anybody take a shot at it? Take a shot at it.
How would the decisions that a leader makes affect those that he is lead or she is leading?
Okay. How the decisions that a leader make impacts or affects the people that one is leading. Spot on good. Spot on good. It's not the one I'm thinking of, because the one I'm thinking of is a little bit more elusive and has to do with introspection. Donna, right, I saw your hand up.
Oh, unmute.
Oh, unmute, Donna. Unmute.
Sorry.
Thank you.
What I was struck with immediately, Bill, is the question that I never asked myself when I should have, and that is, whose perspective am I missing? In other words, I'm looking for balance. And do I have that balance? If so, do I have everything I need? Whose perspective am I missing?
Okay, good one, good one. What perspective am I using to make the decisions that matter to me? And am I missing something that could really matter to me that I don't know about, that I have a blind spot in, possibly? All right, I'm going to try you on it. See if this resonates for you. How am I getting in my own way in what I'm trying to accomplish? How am I detracting from what I am trying to accomplish as a leader because of what I believe, what I think, what I do? I'm going to give you 4 examples of ways you can get in your own way as a leader. We talked about one right out of the chute: closed-mindedness. If you're really closed-minded about something and you're listening to somebody you don't respect and you don't like and you disagree with, and you don't listen to the ideas that they have to see if they have merit, you'll be closing off something, because even people that you don't like or don't appreciate their point of view have good ideas at times. So that sort of listening open-mindedly until you are able to make a good judgment about whether there's merit in what someone says or not, that can get in your way. Mismatched mindset. A mismatched mindset, where what you think your mindset is set on doing does not match the context. Let me give you an example, and I've got 2 more. Student teaching. When I was a little puppy teacher, after graduating from college, I did my student teaching in the spring, going back to my hometown so I could stay with my parents. You know, because college was expensive, and I wanted to student teach with my senior honors English teacher because I had great respect for her. And so I did my first lesson for the supervisor from Washington State University, who was there to watch me and give me feedback. And Mabel Thompson, who was my teacher and had recently passed away in her 90s as a significant flag bearer for the Democratic Party, and just a great teacher, was in the room also. And so I did not realize, however, that the person who was my supervisor, not the teacher, was new to the job. So I put together a dynamite lesson, in my opinion. I got a little phonograph for the classroom. I had a Rolling Stones song. And so me and the Stones were taking on the challenge of really revving these kids up and having them with me and enjoying what we were doing. And I did that. And the student teacher supervisor said, "God, that was the best lesson I've seen from a student teacher yet," not realizing I was the 3rd person she saw. When she left the room to go to something else, I sat there with Mabel Thompson, and she said, "Yes, Bill, you did have them energized, you did have them involved, you were entertaining and engaging, but I have one question for you. What difference did it make?" Now, when we talk about leadership, and every teacher has to be a good leader, and every leader has to be a good teacher. in my opinion. Because you need to work with other people and help bring them along and encourage them to help bring you along as you learn and grow. Now, at first I thought, oh man, I just thought I was a rock star. And all of a sudden I was not a rock star because it hit me pretty hard. And that I wanted very much to please her, my model teacher. And so I started thinking about it, and she said, go away, think about it, and we'll talk. We'll talk, you know, a couple weeks from now. I want you to think about it. So she took on the role that I would call a mentorship role, and asked a question that I was not ready to answer. But over that 2 weeks, I at least came up with enough understanding by being as introspective as I could, that she actually wanted me not just to entertain them and engage them, but that they would leave with something that mattered to them that they would remember. So we were talking about metaphors, but I did not think about in a month, what are they going to remember that they can apply in their life that's a difference maker? Now, I have struggled with that challenge every time I teach, and I've never had a year where I didn't teach, from being in the schools, being a teacher. I was an administrator at age 26, but I still kept teaching at community college, then Portland State, Lewis and Clark. I've always taught. But it's always a challenge for me to say, okay, what can I do that's going to make the most difference for these individuals at this time? I have X amount of time. I have X amount of time. And what do I do with that to make the most difference for you? And that's a valuable process for me, a very valuable process for me. So I would like you to think about that too. In your life, your professional life, your personal life, what do you do that makes a difference for others? And how do you try to make that happen in ways that fit the context? If you look at the materials, hopefully you've got a copy of the materials for this week. If you look at the quote at the top of the page, if I am not for myself, who will be there for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Now, that really struck me the first time that I saw that. I don't know what you thought when you looked at it and tried to interpret it, but the way I saw it when I looked at it was, hey, that really fits what I'm trying to do with leadership like Oswego. Because if I look at that, if I am not for myself, if I'm not trying to improve myself, if I'm not trying to learn and process and practice personal growth myself, who will be there for me? If I'm not a role model, and one of the things I really respect about Jen Shealy, she's already taken this course before, and for me, years ago, I think it's much better, but she's doing it again because her team is doing it. She's a role model in that she's willing to do it again because she can learn and she can grow, and then she can be a part of their learning. Now, if I am only there for myself, what am I? And so my whole pitch on leadership is it's about relationships. It's about helping others rise. It's about making a contribution that you can make to help create a greater good for yourself and for others. And that underlying belief that it matters has to be associated with, there's no way to do it that doesn't involve your work, your process, and your effort and your attitude. Because personal growth, there is no pixie dust. There's no silver bullets. You know, Tinkerbell is not going to come and use her wand to anoint you. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. You have to practice. You have to process. You have to take ideas and make them live within you. And so when I think about what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to relate my experience and give you what my experience is as a leader and what I have drawn upon over time. There are many more things, as you well know, that somebody could be working with you on relative to leadership. These are things that have mattered to me and that I've taught again and again in different ways, and I'm still learning. And so if you look at the top of the page on your first page of your curriculum materials, you'll see I've tried to give you my definitions of 3 things that I think really matter. My definition of agency, my definition of mindset, and my definition of mentoring, and why I believe that I can only mentor you as adults, not really teach you. I can put things in front of you, but I want you to think about this. To learn what can't be taught, you have to take responsibility for becoming your own teacher. What is this learn what can't be taught thing? Right there, under mentoring, to learn what can't be taught. Why would I say, even though I'm standing here, I guess as kind of a somewhat teacher, well, why would I say learn what can't be taught? All right, take that question and see if anybody's willing to give me your take on it. Why say that? Learn what can't be taught. Anybody take a go at it?
Maybe because some things you have to learn through experience.
Perfect, good start. You've got to learn it through experience. What else?
Yeah, I would add to that it has to do with that introspection of yourself, and someone else can't give you that information. You have to learn it on your own.
Perfect. Two great starts. If you have to relate it to your experience. I can't. I don't know your experience. I can know something about you and something about your experience, but if you aren't going to be introspective enough to ask yourself the kind of questions that are going to allow you to continue to grow and strengthen what your understanding and abilities are to combine, in a way that works for you, it's not going to happen. It's kind of like you could take this class and just do a drive-by, show up, smile, be here, but not do the work. If you don't do the work, you're not going to grow. And so that's why we've tried to develop something where you're partnering, you're practicing, and I'm hopeful that there's a difference being made, but it's really because you're doing it, not because I'm doing it. And as we look at leadership in our different roles, as you as a leader have got the same problem that I have. You've got to have people want to be who they are capable of being. And it's up to you to motivate them and to make it live for them. But that's not teaching them. That's really mentoring and asking the right questions and see if they can't ask the right questions. Now, I have another example that your preferences can get in the way of your leadership. Your preferences can get in the way of your leadership. I bet do a little bit of water because you like your preferences. And for most of us, our preferences have really paid off. So I've got one other example, seeing I've got a little bit more time today. At one particular point in time, as superintendent of schools, the district was having difficulty trying to decide whether we should move the sixth graders into the middle schools and have a middle school experience that included sixth grade, with the assumption that those sixth graders are ready for more program, more curriculum, and a more academic focus. And a lot of our sixth graders really outgrow the elementary and what we can offer at the elementary, which are smaller schools than a middle school. But the previous superintendent was the one that I followed was kind of fired over that issue because they didn't do their homework. Well, there are a lot of other reasons too, but on that particular issue was a hotbed issue in the community. So I decided, being the fearless one that I was, that I would want to know more about sixth grade. And what better way for me, a high school teacher and a high school principal, to find out about sixth grade than trying to go and teach for a day at an elementary school, a sixth grade class. It did not go well. But let me use it as an example of where I thought my preferences were just spot on. And I was going to be just a dynamite sixth grade teacher. And so I'm an English major, have a BA, master's degree in English. So I thought, oh God, I've got this passage from Clan of the Cave Bear, and I've got these visuals of the cave paintings in Lesko. We've got the animals being painted by our early primal folks, and I'm going to teach them about change, and I'm going to engage them in trying to understand what a survival environment was like then versus a survival environment now. So I poured a lot of time into my preference, which was teaching English. I also had to teach math. I actually spent more time on teaching math. Why? So I didn't feel very confident with it. So I really nailed it down, right down to the nubbins. And I ended up doing a really good job teaching the math, according to the people that were watching me, and a dismal job doing the other. But let me tell you where it went wrong. So I've got a group of sixth graders, and I'm talking about the survival environment and how they had to kill animals to live in the environment that they were in. And some of those animals were on the walls. And so one of the boys in the classroom said that he had just gone hunting with his dad, and they were shooting rabbits. And so I had another student in the room, very precocious young female, who took issue with killing just for the sake of killing. And so I had a animal advocates person, and so she took on the guy who was sport shooting rabbits, and it went completely sideways because I had trouble getting them to agree on where the happy medium was with anything at that particular point in time. And as I was dying, this kid in the back room raised his hand, and he was an autistic kid, and he said, and he was spot on, "When are we going to get our real teacher back?" And so I knew at that moment that I had lost confidence from my team. And the point is, I used my preferences that would have worked if I was teaching a high school lesson. Does that make sense? Now, I still could have had the animal activist kind of thing, but it went sideways with a 6th grade group as they grew to dislike what we were doing. And so if you play to your preferences, but your preferences don't fit the context, you can get yourself in trouble. And then we all know about blind spots. Blind spots. So I think this is a good time for you to go into your discussion group. And you know, today you're going to join that discussion group twice, because we're going to have you share your takeaways with your discussion group so that you have time to talk about it at the end of the session, just what Mark Birch talked about. So we have a question that I want you to ask yourself. What have you learned about yourself as you have practiced, trying to be introspective, be thoughtful, and what have you learned about the kind of questions and their attributes that have made a difference as you continue to try to challenge yourself and ask yourself to assess how you're doing and continue to try to grow and learn. So you know what the prompt is, and I'm going to ask you to go into your groups, and you have 15 minutes with your facilitator, and I'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you.
All right, we're opening the rooms now. So, and they will get a 3-minute notice and a 1-minute notice.
Okay, how are we doing?
Good. See if it's in. And the application, did Letitia get a room? And everybody is in.
Sure.
So we're going to pause our recording. I think I ducked out too early. Oh, there's Mark. Okay. Yes, I forgot to remind people you can stay on until they transport you. Oh, you can see that on yours. You shouldn't be able to see it. Okay. Let me take a picture. Okay. Just to be sure before.
Bill, we were a group of overachievers, so we're already done.
Cool.
Oh, here they all come. I was a little nervous that we were the only ones and we all left each other.
No, you were good. Okay. So, there we go.
Thank you.
You're all set.
Is everybody back or not?
Everybody should be back.
Wow, cool. All right, we'll be checking in with your facilitators at the end of the day. And I want to move to curiosity right now. So let's take a look at the framework there, which I'm going to call a mental model. And you've been working with me with this, the what, why, how model. One of the things we know is that if you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't have essential attributes or specific knowledge in the domain that you're working in, you're not going to make good decisions about it. It's pretty simple. So spending the time on what it actually is that you're focusing on and trying to understand what's essential to know about it is a very valuable process thinking model. And so I think it's where you start. I've gotten into arguments with people who say, no, it's about your why. you know, you gotta start with your why first. And I say, well, your why is gonna change if you find out what you think is what it is you're talking about isn't so. So you really need to spend time on the initial stages, my opinion, on what it is that you can determine makes it what it is. And so when we look at curiosity, my version of that is it's innate. We are naturally curious. And that innate desire to learn more about what piques our interest, that's key, what piques our interest. Because if you read down through Willingham's research on curiosity, there's a fundamental understanding that's critical about what's going to pique your curiosity and what's not. So let's look at the question at the bottom of the page. Why is understanding the curiosity gap important to leadership? So what is the curiosity gap? As you looked at this, you read it, you looked it over. Hopefully there was a nugget, an insight there for you when you went through. And number 4, people are maximally curious. Number 6, once engaged, sustaining long-term curiosity. And number 7, the curiosity gap challenge. You read those things. How do they speak to you about the importance of the curiosity gap when we're talking about leadership? So, give me the screen back, please. Who's willing to weigh in? Why does understanding the what, why, how of curiosity gap make a difference to leadership? Anybody? Jen, please. Thank you.
I think
Good to
that
see you.
the curiosity gap has to do with putting our own biases and stepping out to be able to see other perspectives of the people that we're guiding. So it's not just what we know, it's looking at this model, or it's looking at this decision making from outside of our comfort zone and staying in that curiosity place.
Mm-hmm. And why does the curiosity gap make what Jen is talking about a problem? Because what is the curiosity gap? What's the gap? When you read this, it's right in front of you, hopefully. When you read this, what is the curiosity gap? We're only curious about what?
We're curious about short-term versus long-term, how it pertains to us.
Yep. Don't be hesitant. That's dead on right. You're not curious about the future, and leadership is about the future. Does that make sense? You're not naturally curious about things that you're already not focused on and interested in. For you to pay attention to something that doesn't hold your current interest is rare. And then try to pursue it. So the curiosity gap, when we look at it here, most importantly, does not factor in long-term interests. And if leadership is about the future and how you're making decisions now about what's going to happen in the future, if you're a leader, if you're trying to lead yourself, do personal life, do personal life. If you're looking at the conditions that you're trying to create for the success of your relationships in your personal life. And you're going to be more focused, significantly more focused on what's mattering in the present, and not as well focused and curious about how to figure out what the present is going to mean to the future. It's more difficult for you to lead, because leadership is about the future. It's about what you do now to make a better future. You want to continue to kind of build on that. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And so let's give you an example. When I was fortunate enough to become superintendent of schools in Lake Oswego, we passed a very significant money measure that would have allowed the district to raise our budget 6% for the rest of the known world lifetime. Soon after that, ballot measure 5 passed, which took away local control of funding, because we could ask our community for money as much as we wanted to ask, and if they would give us whatever they were willing to give us. So we had a lot of money to work with. But that stopped when ballot measure 5 passed. So there were several measures that had previously failed to do that, but not as cleverly designed. So one of the things that was very, very clear to me as superintendent, we were a high spending district with lots of money and lots of program. And if that passed, we were going to be getting state money. And do you think anybody was going to care about Lake Oswego and their needs to provide all this program for kids that was different than other people around the state? No. They were not going to. And so I really started investing in trying to find out what the psychology was that they were using. And I was very fortunate because I had a neighbor that really didn't like our schools and didn't like me much. And he was on the planning team for the group that was pushing the measure. And so I was able to engage him in some constructive, discomforting conversations that helped me understand the logic and the psychology of what they were doing. And that is, we can lower your taxes, it's going to phase in, it will take place over 4 or 5 years, and the state will fix the problem. And that gives the state plenty of time to fix the problem of the distribution of funds in the state of Oregon. Now, has the legislature ever fixed the problem about the distribution of funds and the haves and the have-nots in the school districts in the state of Oregon? No. So we took a look at that and we decided that being a high spending district, we're going to have to change the entire district, because we were going to have to do a high quality job with far less money. So we started working on it through the middle of the year before the November vote. And I started building a plan as to how we would process all the decisions that needed to be made, and tried to get my administrators to understand that you can't solve problems with money. And if you can't, then we just can't support the kind of staff we have. We've got to be ready for that. And you've got to be ready psychologically for that. And so we worked on that with a lot of resistance from my administrative staff, actually, who believed you don't solve problems that you don't have, basically. And fortunately for our school district, we were on the front end of all the changes that needed to be made, because we looked at it and spent time on looking at what our future would look like if we continued not to prepare for something that really mattered to our kids and to our families and to the district. The only school district that was somewhat close to where we were was West Lynn. They were about a year behind us. Tigard was almost 3 years behind us in making the changes, for example. But the point is, with curiosity, who has to bridge the curiosity gap? You. How do you bridge the curiosity gap? You ask yourself the question. And what's the question? What is the question that you would ask yourself if you know that you're not likely to focus on what it's going to take to create a different future than you're expecting? And how realistic is that? If it's realistic, you might want to get going and start working on what it's going to take. It holds up in personal relationships. It holds up in organizational relationships. Am I making sense? It might not be engaging. It might not be anywhere near as fun as what you're paying attention to right now, but it sure as heck going to pay off in the future if you're right. You know, with all the time we spend on it, if I was wrong, I was probably dead meat and wouldn't have been around long. But I was really fortunate to have a really savvy school board members that understood the dilemma we would have if we had to start from where we were and without being prepared, be an average spending school district in the state of Oregon. It would have been a huge problem. So I don't know if that example works for you, but one of the things that any of these truths that we're working on will work in your private world and they'll work in your organizational business world. And what the model is here that makes sense to me that I would suggest that you practice is the what, why, how distinctions that you have to process asking yourself those questions. I'm not reading you very well, so let's do what teachers often do and turn the page. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. Here we go. Here we go. That may not have been the most exciting part of today. Okay. This idea of a mental model, a cognitive model that allows you to apply to whatever you're thinking about. We just talked about the what, why, how model. But when you look at that paragraph, the third paragraph on the page that I've written here for you, mental models give us the cognitive ability to simplify complexity, to make something simple so that you can start thinking about it from what matters, determine relevance, avoid blind spots, and build connections. So each one of these four models you've already had shared with you. Now, I built them into the first lessons. The what, why, how model, I've used it again and again. The brain biases that help and hinder model. The attentional focus awareness model, and the mindset, purpose, and influence or power model. each one of these models can be used to think about yourself and build the questions that you want to ask yourself off from. Again, you should think of them as maps. The model is a map, but it's not a territory. It doesn't give you all the details. Like if I say to Jen Singer, okay, I have a home in Lake Oswego and it's at the end of a cul-de-sac. And so I've given her two pieces of information about my home. One, that it's in Lake Oswego and that it is on a cul-de-sac and it's on the south side of the lake. But, you know, those are three things. But that gives her an idea of what the property might look like, but it doesn't give her what the territory or property actually looks like. And so the model gets you started. Then you have to apply the model to specific circumstances. So if you know that your brain has a truth bias, that your brain will start working on your response to something before you even know it's working on it. So you're not aware of it. It's starting to take your experience and all the things that it already has known about how you respond and react, and it starts working toward getting a decision about behavior before you're aware of it. That's why we talk about a truth bias. You want to close the deal based on what you already know and understand. So if you know that, clicking pause and asking yourself, does my regular response to this kind of situation really fit what's going on now? Because you're going to start doing it like you always do it when you face that situation. And you have to be the one that's in charge of yourself to think about your own thinking and realize that that's going to happen. And if you pause and think about it, does it still hold up in this situation? Or how would I do it in this situation? There's great value in that pause in that situation if you know that's going to happen. You also need to know that novelty is going to divert your attention. Fear is going to divert your attention. That's going to happen. It's going to happen automatically. The brain is hardwired to do that. And so if you need to overcome that, you need to choose to overcome it and work on it with yourself. You also know that we have a confirmation bias habit, that we think what we think really is more viable and important than what other people think. And so if you remain open-minded and try to seek merit, you have the ability to make that change in your behavior because you chose to do it. It's about choice. All of these models are about choice. And you being in control of the choice you actually make if you understand and apply the model so you can decide on your own, given your best judgment, what to take into consideration. Leaders who have sound, dependable mental models are going to make better decisions over time, not Alice. And so that's what that's about. So let's take a look at one of the models, the power over, power through, and empowering to. Can you look down at your model? You got copies of it in front of you, right? I see some yeses. I see Frank showing me the bottle. Yeah, hopefully you've got the bottle there. How many people need it on this? Good job, Liz. Wow. All right, so we're down in the right-hand lower corner. Tell me which of those two blend better than the other one. Could you see blending power through and power over? I'm giving you a trick question, and I'm not doing it very well. But let's say this way. Here's the question. Can you imagine yourself being a power over dominating leader? Can you imagine yourself being a power through relationship building leader? Can you imagine yourself being an empowering leader who seeks the promise in other people and tries to help them rise? Which one do you think is most you? Which one do you think is most you? And here's the other question. That is, okay. Could you see a time when you have to do all three of them?
I do see a time when you have to do all three. I actually see myself more in power through and empowering too. And that's actually I think my limitation is that you do need to power over at times, and that's a struggle for me. And I have to really strategically plan out how it's going to look down to every word I'm going to say. Otherwise, I feel like I just don't have that strength to go for it. I always try to win people over first, which is probably my downside.
And Jen's comment, I think, was very wise in the sense that if you know yourself well enough, I mean, aren't there times in your life where you've had to assume power over a decision? Aren't there times in your life where you've had to work with relationships and influence relationships such that you're working well with other people? Marriage is one of those things where you. I have failed a couple times, so I have some experience with this. And empowering too, helping other people grow. And my sense is you have to do all three of these things. So how are you going to do them so they're effective and are still you? One of the things that I've always believed, and I think I've said this to you before, that I think is important for you to think about is I've always believed in differentiation without separation. When I look at people and relationships, differentiation without separation. I want you to be the person you're capable of being. I want you to be different. Everybody's different to some extent. And so if I'm working with you and I'm in a leadership role, I want you to be your best you. I've said this to Mark Burge before because he has a tremendous personality and a set of abilities to work with people. And he does a great job of being himself. And he understands that self. And he can play to it, and it's very powerful, and it's very successful. So I want Mark to be that self if I'm working with him, because he's real good at being himself. But it will be different than somebody else's best self. So I want you to be different. I want you to be understanding that differentiation to me is important. We have to have the voices and the contribution and the abilities of several people when we're working as a leader. But you can't be separate. Now, when I say you can't be separate, you got to be trying to help us along as best you can. And whatever it is we're trying to do. So I believe in differentiation without separation. You want the best that everybody can contribute, and you have to create the conditions for that best to shine. And that requires putting people in the right role, trying to play to the strengths, being grateful for people, being appreciative of people, giving people credit for what they do. I mean, there's so many things that matter about creating conditions for other people's success. And so one of the things that we're going to try to do as we head down this road is that we're going to start trying to practice these 4 mindsets. I want you to, and I'll be sending you on Monday, with your usual Monday gift, which is the practice expectations and the new partnering pairing. But I want you to look at these models right now, and I want you to think about how you would be able to apply each one of these models. Let's take the visible context, invisible subtext, and imaginable future text. And then at the bottom, believing is seeing just as much as seeing is believing. Let's look at that one. And I want you to think about it and tell me what the value or limitation of that would be. I'd like some contributions now where you look at that model and see how you might apply it in your interactions with people. As Christopher Boyer says, a conversation and interaction with anybody without a question is not much of a conversation. So what kind of questions might you have for yourself if you're applying that model in the interactions that you're using? What value do you see in this? Talk to me about it. I'm looking for you to tell me how that might be very, very valuable to you as a leader.
I was talking to my small group about how I was just elected to the leadership team at my church. And so I think the attentional focus awareness model is something that I'm using right now because there are folks, you say something in a meeting and you can take that at face value. But then what I always think is, what are the emotions behind that? Because sometimes in professional settings, we think that, or at least I think that sometimes, it's emotionless, but we all have emotions and that comes through regardless of where we're at. And so for me, it's about thinking about first, what are they saying? Kind of going back to the active listening. And then besides that, what are their motivations behind that? Like, what does it actually mean? So I might ask questions and ask them to elaborate or how they got to that point where they're at right now. And then I like to think about how do I feel about that? And when I receive that, like, are there any biases that are coming in? Are my previous interactions with that person coloring how I'm receiving what they're saying? So really thinking about getting under the surface of what their emotions and intentions are and what mine are, and then taking it a step further to kind of that future text. If we have a common goal that we're trying to get to, how does what we're looking at now and how we feel now and the decisions that we're making now project into the future, and how can we kind of course correct if we need to in order to get there? So I really resonated with this model because I kind of feel like I'm living it right now. So
Great comment. Great comment. Who else? Help. help each other, just with perspective right now. If you were trying to practice this model, what do you see the value of it, or the limitations of it that you would want to think about? Any other brave soul?
Bill, I would want to think about the invisible subtext. I've been thinking a lot about biases and like, how do my biases affect how I interpret what someone says, how I respond to someone, the decisions that I make. We've been talking a lot about equity in our district and how do we ensure equitable academic outcomes? How do we ensure equity across the district? Talking a lot about how equity is not just about race, it's about all different types of, diversity in the human condition, right? And so I've been just thinking a lot about my own personal biases. We all have biases. And so how do I recognize what those biases are and then and make myself aware of them when I am interacting with people, when I'm interpreting what people say to me, and when I create my response to someone or a situation.
Great. Help each other out. I mean, help each other by sharing. One of the things that we want to try to encourage here is the value of you sharing with each other as people get a chance to hear what you have to offer and what the other person is working with. It's valuable. What you have to contribute is valuable. When you're ready to contribute, please give it a shot. Robin, go ahead.
I think one of the things that I always look at too, it's not only the context, but it's also your what you're portraying physically when you're having those conversations, which to me is that visible context versus invisible context. You could be having a conversation and, oh, let's see, I'm going to pick up my phone and check it, or, and I think sometimes those physical things also come into play with what your discussion is and how that discussion moves forward.
Mm-hmm. Good. Other people.
I'll jump in. So I'm just thinking of an example we have here right now, a conflict between two staff members that's been ongoing for a couple of years. And at the surface level, if you look at it, you can see these two kind of chip at each other every once in a while in a meeting, or they might say something to another staff member about the one that they're in conflict with. And I think in terms of what we see is these two people who don't apparently like each other. But as you dig into it a little more and kind of dig into the personalities of the two that are in conflict here, there's a lot of, it's actually very similar. They both have a lot of insecurity that's kind of driving this conflict, because they both feel disrespected by the other one. They both feel that unvalued. And I think at its core, when you get into that second level of talking about invisible subcontexts, attitudes and emotions and motivation, it feels a lot more like I'm putting up a wall because I don't want to address my own insecurity connected to this. And this other person who's chipping at me is making me have to think about that.
Mm-hmm. So what do you see as a role that a person in your particular position can do to help with that? I mean, you said it's been going on for a couple of years, so.
It has, yeah, and it's new for me. I'm newly supervising this situation, so I think my role in it is going to be to bring both of them in individually and talk with them about what I'm seeing, and then hopefully bring the two of them together and start to just kind of have a really vulnerable conversation and see if that works.
And so what would you do to create readiness in that individual conversation? What would you try to do to build readiness so that you had a chance to have that group chat work?
I mean, I think for me, they need, in those individual conversations, I need to get to a spot where they know that I see their value. I see it, you know, I see it, I understand it, and that I believe that they're misunderstood in this relationship. So that I think on both ends of that, I think that'll be my goal. And I think if I can establish that, then they're gonna hopefully trust that I can bring the two of them together, and that we'll hold that value on the table as we're talking.
Is there a difference between disrespecting someone and not liking someone?
I don't know.
I mean, you talked about you talked about disrespecting, and I was
Yeah.
just kind of curious about.
I
Anyway,
would say, yeah, they would both readily say that the other one disrespects them and doesn't like them.
okay.
So I think they check both boxes.
They check both boxes.
Yeah.
Okay. Something to work on. I've tried that strategy and it has worked sometimes and not so much sometimes. So that,
Yeah.
but all right, where are we? Questions? Any questions that you have about right now anyway, about the expectations to start practicing using the models as a guide or a map to help you then zero in on the details that the model will help you start thinking about. Because again, it's a map, it's not a territory. The individual context is what you really need to work on, but the model gives you a starting point. So if you know that the invisible subtext is always going to be at play, and sometimes it really matters to try to understand what that subtext is, and maybe ask the person. Maybe the question is one of being courageous enough to be vulnerable and ask about it, to really understand. Because you really care about the person and you want to understand how they're feeling about something that is going on. All right.
Hey, Bill?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, let's.
You may have addressed it, Bill, but I may have missed it. And I'm trying to be attentive and thoughtful, which is, as you know me pretty well, sometimes that's my challenge, is to put 100% attention into everything all the time. But did you talk about how we know which mindset model we might be applicable to a certain situation? Or can you take any of these models and apply them regardless of the situation, because it kind of gives you a roadmap to deal with you know what I'm asking there?
Make distinctions among the models then.
How do you know which model to apply at which time?
Applicability.
Yeah.
Well, anytime you're thinking about something in some domain, trying to focus on something, the what, why, how model is an applicable model. Because anytime you're looking at a problem, like Lou and I were just talking about a situation that he's going to try to work on. Anytime you look at it, a problem that you want or something that you want to make better, you need to ask yourself, what is it really? What are its essential attributes? And there's a big difference between what's essential to know about something and the associations you can make about it. Like if I tell you, okay, what are the two, and I'm only going to give you two, what are the two most essential qualities of leadership, if you only had two, what would your two be, the most essential qualities of leadership? Now, that what you're trying to do is trying to say that, oh, these are critical attributes. There's all kinds of things you can say about leadership, you can associate with leadership, but what I'm looking at a problem, what's the problem that we need to solve between these two individuals that Lou is talking about? So I'm trying to drill down and say, okay, is there a difference between not liking someone, not wanting to go and have a beer with them, and I just don't really like that person, and really disrespecting that person, which to me starts at a different level of feeling about a person. So that model to me works in anything that you want to be focused on, to understand why it matters and then to understand how it works. If you don't know how it works, how are you going to make it work? If you don't know how curiosity works, how are you going to make curiosity work for you? And one of the things that we know about curiosity is that we don't tend to focus on the future and get ourselves to work on the future. We focus more on the present with anything that we're curious about. What we already know and understand and see a pathway to. So that model is pretty universal anytime you're going to focus on anything. If I'm sitting with my administrative team and I'm sitting down at work, we've got a problem, I'm going to want us to drill down on what's essential to know about this problem. What makes this problem what it is? And I'm going to want to know, why does it matter? Why does this thing matter that we address it one way or another? And then I'm going to want to know, how does it work? How is this happening? What's causal? What's not causal? What's essential? What's not essential? So one of the things that I'm interested in, and I want to have a conversation with Kimby about the organization that she is taking a leadership role in, and how she's looking at that notion of heartfelt concern and care and leadership. And so, I'm hoping that somewhere in my future.
Sorry about that. I have another spouse in the room talking as well at the same time, but I'll ask a question that is related to your comments, Dr. Korach. You're right. In the work that I do for LO for Love, the mindset that really resonates and that I use the most is power through and empowering. But my question to you is, I'm really looking over the description that you wrote for power over, is where one sees their purpose as dominating others through role and or personality while being right and avoiding vulnerability. And I hear people talking about how it's important to have aspects of all three different mindsets. And I'm just wondering, how is that, I'm struggling to see how that is a good leadership quality, dominating over others and not showing vulnerability. I mean, the only thing, go ahead.
No, it's a great question, because what I wrote in there was the extreme, which is the male toxicity power over. The research on male toxicity cultures where the power and maintaining one's power is critical. What I wrote there is so that you could think about that in the extreme, and I didn't say that, so that you can write your own definition here. Because when you have to take a stand and have the authority to override what other people want with something that you think is better and you're willing to stand up for it, what are the qualities and characteristics that you believe you would want to be in doing that? I mean, one of the most difficult thing to do is to is to tell a person that they are no longer employed, especially if it's a person that you like and appreciate and have worked with over time. And so, but if you're in a particular role, like when we had to go through a great deal of downsizing in the district, we could not maintain the number of employees we had. And so how do you do that? And you don't do it like this. You do it with a deep amount of sensitivity and caring, and allowing them to have voice, and trying to help them with their next employment sort of thing. And so you're pointing out a really inconsistent nature of that model. And if I was to rewrite it again after seeing what you've just questioned, because you're just spot on right, that should be written differently in terms of me asking you, how would you want to exercise power over others? And not that it would need to be this way. This is not actually a very caring or acceptable way, but we do have this model out there.
Yeah, actually, after hearing your explanation and hearing that it is an extreme, it makes a lot of sense. And in reflecting on the work that I do, I see that coming through whenever I have to, like you said, make a stand and take an unpopular position on something.
Mm-hmm.
And usually how I've done it in the past is I talk to people one-on-one, take them aside, kind of really listen to their concerns, and then try to show them another side and work through it that way. So yeah, that, and also, yeah, if you're trying to terminate somebody, those are great examples.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even when you have a rationale where you're terminating a person because you cannot have as many employees, versus when you're terminating a person for an act that you cannot abide, or behavior that you cannot support. Those things can be very emotional because you could really like the person, but you can't put up with the action. Those are the times that I've had more difficulty with it. But you've got to take a stand. There are some times where you've got to draw the line and have the strength to stand up and not waver in terms of what you have to do, in my opinion. And when you do that, you've got to draw the line in a particular place and explain that. It's kind of like when you're working with a student problem, you try to love the kid, even though you don't love the behavior, And so you got to invest in the kid because he's your kid. If you're working with a situation like that. And so if you can express your concern for the person and care about the person and try to help them beyond that and still draw the line. Jen.
I just have a comment. I was really excited when I saw this topic come across our email. At the beginning of the pandemic, this is more comment for people, sorry, but at the beginning of the pandemic, I was really struggling with decision-making and understanding where my decision-making came from. So I actually spent the last 18 months studying mental models. This has been like my thing that I've done. So this topic was really exciting because I think that once you understand them, it helps remove your blind spots as to how you make decisions. And most of what we make decisions on comes from our own understanding of the world, but we're only one person in our group, right? And so I more than the 4 models that Dr. Korach put on here, if questioning how you make decisions or why you make decisions There's a lot of really cool resources to study mental models. I actually have 9 of them hanging on my office wall because there's a, to Kimby's point, there's a time and a place of, or maybe it was Mark's, there's a time and a place when you use each one. For me, there's a circle of competence model. And I come back to this model all the time of like, is this in my circle of competence or do I need to refer this out? Am I actually the best person to be talking to about that? And sometimes when I look at that model, all of a sudden I realize the best leadership that I can do is not be the expert, right? And so to be able to step out and say, this is not in my area of expertise, but maybe adding that question to something that I want to work on to expand my circle of competence as one of the models for decision making for me. So there's a ton, when you can figure out how to use these and how to implement them into all your decision making. I use them with my family, I use them with work. But these mental models really make me step back and look at my own blind spots instead of just plowing forward.
Yeah, I'll be interested to have you share some of those with me.
I can take a picture of my wall if you'd like to see it.
I love it. I'd love to have a picture of your wall. I'll give you a picture of my garage. I'll share it.
They're all hanging.
What under the visual for this week, and then I'm gonna stop. We live in 2 worlds, an inner world and an outer world, both of which matter to our personal growth. You have to know your inner world, and you have to know as much as you can about the outer world, and they interplay between the 2 as you lead and try to make a difference for other people. And so I really appreciate the time with you today, and you're going to now go into talking about your takeaways from today with each other. And who am I giving it to? Mark? Mark, are you taking it, or is it Neelam who's taking it?
Well, I can take it, but I think I'm just taking it to Liz to put us in our breakout.
I think
Put
so.
it in the rooms for 8 minutes, 10 minutes.
10.
10 minutes,
10
okay, and then we'll
minutes.
come back. All right, here we go. Guess we'll give them a 3-minute warning.
Yeah, probably.